Have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Artest looking, gets it Bryant. Bryant turning, has to put it up with the buzzer. Banks it! Oh! He banks it!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. As you guys know, this is a very, very busy time around the NBA. Obviously, we're heading right up against the trade deadline tomorrow, right? You know, under 24 hours from now. So under 24 hours from now, I'm hoping to hear that the Sixers have a newly acquired star. But we will certainly get into that in this episode. Starting out, I definitely want to just get into the Sixers' loss to the Suns. You know, amongst all of this trade deadline madness, there is still basketball being played. So I do want to keep that in mind with my show here today. And I do apologize. I think the last time I was, back with you guys was after the Memphis win, which obviously was a huge win. A lot of things have changed since then as far as how the Sixers have looked. But I've been super busy with graduate school, kind of why I didn't do the live show this time. This is going to be pre-recorded, as you can see by now. But just super busy with homework, grad school. I just got a promotion at work. So, clapping my hands, pat myself on the back for that. But life moves on, right? Life keeps going and we stay busy despite whatever time it is in the sports world. But I do apologize for not being more active on social media in the last few days or so as this news just continues to spew out. So, of course, there's already been a few trades. I'll get into those. I definitely want to dissect those and talk about them. But yeah, make sure if you're not already, house cleaning, of course, housekeeping, I guess you could say. Make sure if you're not already following DSM Media at DSM_media, go click the follow button on Twitter, on IG, Instagram. You can find us at DSM.DoSomethingMajor. Make sure to follow us on there. We got content coming every day. And then, of course, DSM Media's TikTok. That's at DSM Media. That TikTok is blowing up and we are bringing content there every day. And quite honestly, it's just a lot of goddamn fun every day bringing the nonsense there. So definitely make sure you're following us on all platforms. And then, of course, myself, make sure if you're not already following me at Scotty Drown on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Follow me on all of them. I stay pretty active. I'm on there every day. Even though I am in graduate school, I stay busy, guys. So make sure you're following me on all platforms. But let's get into business here today, right? The Sixers are in the midst of a basketball season right now, despite what Ben Simmons may believe. They are in the middle of a season right now. They are playing basketball. And last night we had a 114-109 loss to the Phoenix Suns. It was right at Wells Fargo Center, so the Sixers were at home for this one. The Sixers were coming off a 119-108 win in Chicago against the number one seeded Chicago Bulls. They might be number two now. I think Miami may have moved ahead of them. But nonetheless, a big win in Chicago, and then you follow it up with a big loss at home against one of the best, if not the best team in the NBA right now, at least record-wise they are, in the Phoenix Suns. In that game, we had Joel Embiid with 34 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 13 for 25 from the field, 2 for 8 from the three-point line. Tobias Harris, strong January, keeping that going. 30 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 13 for 18 from the field, 2 for 4 from the three-point line. The efficiency just continues to go up with Tobias. You love to see that. Tyrese Maxey stepping in with 14 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 for 16 from the field. Wasn't his greatest shooting night. He went 0 for 4 from the three-point line, I believe. But nonetheless, the third leading scorer for the Sixers. Also wanted to point out Seth Curry last night, which Seth Curry has been dismal in the past few games, but specifically this one last night, 3 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 5 fouls, 1 for 9 from the field and 1 for 6 from the 3-point. And mind you, he was getting some great looks last night. And if Seth played even half as good as what he usually does, Sixers win this game easily. They were up by double digits at one point. There was a couple shots that the Sixers, these players usually make, and that's including Seth. You miss those type of shots. Those are game-changing missed shots, and obviously he didn't have a game that he would like to remember. So Sixers end up dropping this one. On the other side, we have Devin Booker with 35 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 11 for 23 from the field, 3 for 8 from the three-point line. Devin Booker, man, this dude is an assassin. They compare him to Kobe. I get it. I 100% understand it because there's not one person that I can think of in my mind that has a game so similar to Kobe's. Like it's not, the shooting. It's not necessarily the mid-range. DeMar DeRozan has the mid-range, right? Some people compare his game to Kobe at times. But D-Book, just the spots on the floor, the way he does it, the look in his eye that he gives, they call it the Mamba mentality, and Devin Booker has all of that. He's so annoying. Don't get me wrong. As a Philly fan playing against him, he does the bitch and the flopping, but that's every superstar. Let's be honest. And I'm going to give respect where it's due for Devin Booker because he's a stud, and it's not talked about enough because he should be in that top 10 NBA players in the league right now, and he's not mentioned in those conversations. And I think it's time we start putting some respect on his name, especially after that playoff performance that we saw from him last season, leading the Suns to the finals. CP3, steady as always, 16 points, 12 assists, 4 rebounds, 7 for 18 from the field, 1 for 2 from the three-point line. It just seems like whenever you get into these close games, especially against a team like Phoenix, right? Like specifically against a team like Phoenix, there's a good chance you're going to lose this game if it's within 5 points either way as you get down the stretch against Phoenix, because Chris Paul is just tough as nails. He's clutch. He's good with the basketball. He doesn't turn the ball over, obviously. He's one of the best maestros of all time. And, he just does it every single night. I mean, there was one point throughout the game where Matisse Thybulle looks at CP3, says something to him, and I'm just like, Matisse, don't open up this can of worms, because the thing about CP3 is not that he's going to come out and drop 30 or 40 on you. He can drop 30 on you. But he's very maniacal about the way he scores, his spots, how he gets people the ball. And once you wake that beast up, it's once again that Mamba mentality. He's going to kill you. And he did it last night. Just a couple tough, mid-range, right around the rim, fadeaway jump shots. And it's just like, man, there's no stopping that. If you're in Embiid, you step up on Paul. He's going to lob it over you to Ayton or whoever's in there, McGee, who also went off last night. But CP3, you can't say enough about that guy. And I've seen people have him in their MVP list. He's not up there with like Jokic and Embiid for me, obviously, but he's in the combo, right? Like night in, night out, what he does on the court is, it's actually it's underrated, and it's unable to be, checked in a box score. It's the intangibles, it's the leadership with Chris Paul, and it never goes understated. I think everybody around the league knows that about him now, since you saw what he did with OKC and now Phoenix, back-to-back years where they look like legit contenders. Mikal Bridges, I mean, we're going to beat this horse to death, right? Or I should say, we're going to keep beating this dead horse. I don't want to beat the horse to death, but Mikal Bridges, 23 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 9 for 14 from the field. The kid hoops every time. And, every time he comes to Wells Fargo Center, book it. I doubt the Sixers are going to win these games because he's going to have this ultimate chip on his shoulder, and he's another player on that team that you don't need with a chip on their shoulder. They don't need extra motivation to kill you. And talk about what the Sixers could use right now. Mikal Bridges is that and more. And that's one that we're going to regret. That's one that the Sixers front office down the line will continue to regret. And it'll continue to stab us in the back, right? As I mentioned, otherwise, JaVale McGee, 15 points, 12 rebounds in that game. He outworked Andre Drummond, which you don't usually see from a backup center, which just lets me know how perfectly built this Phoenix Suns team is built with Monty Williams. You look around the box score, you look at what happened in that game last night. Cameron Johnson didn't shoot well from three. They didn't have Cameron Payne. They had Elfrid Payton playing the backup point guard position. You had, oh my God, Crowder. Yeah, I don't know why I was forgetting his name. You had Crowder. He had 0 points last night, but put up, like 12 or 16 boards. So just, not even having their guys on in that game and being able to take control and win that game against a team that was relatively healthy in the Sixers. But it just pointed out what the Sixers need more and how perfectly constructed the Phoenix Suns are in reality. But obviously the Sixers need a point guard. Doc Rivers said that after the game. Maxey is great. Seth has been on and off this season. Shake is what he is. He's been out lately with that back injury, but they need a point guard. Tyrese Maxey can't run the point all game, every game. Seth hasn't looked great, and honestly, he doesn't need more responsibilities than he has already had. And quite frankly, the Sixers need a backup or a starting point guard. And the reason I say a backup or a starting is because I'm 100% content with having Maxey start throughout the rest of this season. Don't get me wrong. But if you can bring in a starting caliber point guard and have Maxey run with that second unit and kind of run as a combo guard on and off the bench, you can, once again, this is asking a lot of Doc, you can stagger Maxey. Even if he doesn't start, you can still get him minutes on the court with Embiid, get him minutes on the court with the second unit, whatever you want to do there. And he can be that spark plug as a six-man off the bench. I think that would be ideal for this team this year. Talking about getting a starting point guard, have Maxey come off the bench, man that unit, really provide that spark. As far as Maxey's development, I think it's best he stays in the starting lineup. Take what you want with that statement, but I think it's better if Maxey starts for Maxey's future. I think it's better for the Sixers this season if Maxey's a sixth man and they have a starting caliber point guard in that starting unit taking his spot. The other things that I'm looking at in that game yesterday, it kind of ties into not having a second point guard. But Doc's rotations killing us. I specifically noticed them at the end of the first quarter, towards the beginning of the second, at the end of the third quarter, towards the beginning of the fourth. You're killing us, Doc. I mean, you're putting Korkmaz, Niang, Danny Green, Andre Drummond, and Matisse Thybulle out there at the same damn time. That cannot happen, and I don't care who you have available healthy. I really don't care. You didn't see any Isaiah Joe in that game, and quite frankly, Korkmaz, Niang, Danny Green, Drummond, Thybulle, who is dribbling the goddamn ball? Who is orchestrating the offense? Who is scoring the basketball with that lineup on the court? And I'll let that question out there because the answer is none. There is nobody on that lineup that you should expect to go out there and contribute towards scoring. And then as you see it in the fourth quarter, he elongates the minutes. Get Embiid back in the game. You're trying to beat the number one seed Phoenix Suns right now. Get Embiid back in the game before 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Let's get him back in the game with 8-9 minutes left in the fourth quarter and give ourselves a chance. You get Tobias. If you want to run that second unit, at least let Tobias run the second unit with them. And I'm not even saying that that's a viable or a good option. You at least have to do that. Let him run the second unit. My God. And then, of course, Seth Curry, if you want to put him out there, obviously he was cold last night, but he's another guy that can be staggered and run that second unit. And then Maxey is the obvious one that you stagger with Embiid in that first unit and you stagger it into the second. I mean, it's not rocket science. That's what I've been asking for all season. You put Maxey in the starting lineup because he's your best point guard and he's still optimal beside Embiid. When Embiid comes out of the lineup, you stagger Maxey so that he can still run that second unit when Embiid's out the lineup. Now Maxey can be himself, be aggressive, drive the lane, get in the paint, and score. That's what Maxey does. He's a combo guard that likes to fucking score. It's not rocket science, guys, but this is going to be an ongoing thing. That's why we have to get a better backup or a starting caliber point guard because Doc won't do that. Doc simply won't do that. He'll continue running his 5-in, 5-out hockey switch lineups, and we need a backup point guard to man the second unit, whether that's Maxey or, an incoming point guard as a trade deadline or a buyout candidate. So, I'm not expecting Doc to change. I really don't ever expect him to adjust, as you shouldn't either, because he's never showed the inclination to do so. So don't get your hopes up. I'm just pointing out the negative factors from last night's game. Aside from that, Point Ferk needs to go. I mean, that ties into everything I already talked about. That just can't even be a thing. Point Ferk. And shame on me for ever even thinking for a second that could work. No. Seth is beyond cold right now. Needs a couple nights. I would give Seth a couple nights off. He looks injured, whether it's dealing with COVID still, if he's still dealing with the ankle, the back injury, whatever the case may be. Give him a few nights off. We don't need to diminish his confidence. We don't need Sixers fans booing him. We don't need anything negative else coming from this shooting slump. It's just a shooting slump. That's it. Let him get his wits about him. Give him a few nights off. Once we get out of this All-Star break, I expect Seth Curry to be right back on track if he's not moved. That's a very big side note. The other thing I wanted to point out, I said it earlier, but Tobias Harris has been great in the new year. And I know nobody wants to talk about it. I had Kai Carlin on last week. He pointed it out. I try to stay in between with Tobias Harris because I know that I'm going to get looked at as bias homer because this guy gave me an autographed jersey. He sent it to my house personally, DM'd me, offered me the jersey, and sent it to my house. So I'm going to look like a homer no matter what I say about Tobias Harris if it's positive. So I try to stay in the middle in that conversation. But in my mind, if I'm being completely transparent, being completely honest, Sixers fans are acting real shady about the way they treat Tobias Harris, because we were real quick to hit him with the boos, say this, that, he deserves this, he's a max contract player, he's not living up to his contract. That's all fair. That was fair at the time, and I thought it was a little harsh, but fair nonetheless. That's what Philly is. They're going to hold you accountable. Fair enough. Tobias, came back at that, responded to the boos, told the crowd to shut the fuck up. Wrong move on his end, right? Like, no, I thought, this is Tobias really losing himself. He doesn't know what he's doing right now. If he doesn't like the boos then, he's definitely not going to like them now. And he apologized for what he said, letting himself get frustrated, letting himself get out of hand, out of his standards of how he composes himself. And, look what we have now. We have Tobias Harris looking like all-star Tobias from last season. And I just want to put these numbers out there in the world, before I go ahead and say this, but Tobias Harris in January, 19.8 points per game, 6.9 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists per game, 88.1% from the free throw line, 43.1% from the three-point line, 51.7% from the field. In February so far, 21 points per game, 6.8 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game, 75% from the free throw stripe, 42.9% from the three-point line, and 62.1% from the field. So just in the new year, Tobias Harris is averaging 20.4 points per game, 6.9 rebounds per game, 3.8 assists per game, 81.5% from the free throw stripe, 43% from the three-point line, and 56.9%, 57% from the field. So what I'm getting at here is, where is that energy? You had so much negative energy built up, ready to just crucify Tobias Harris. He's been on a hot streak for over a month now. So where's his credit? The Sixers had a great month of January. They're not off to a great start in February. Let's be honest. They're running into some competition. It's looking sketchy. But as we look back on January and on into February, the numbers don't lie. He's at an 80, 40, 50 split right now as far as his shooting percentages. He's looking like all-star Tobias from last season. and he's not getting the credit that's due. And you know what? It's fine. I don't expect Tobias to care about the credit. Like, it's not about that. It's about winning for these guys. And I know that. It's about winning for me. It's not going to ruin my day if everybody doesn't cheer Tobias. I go out here. I have to present the numbers. That's all I'm doing is presenting the numbers. The numbers that we want him to achieve, he achieves them, but we don't commend him. But when he doesn't achieve them, we degrade him. That's fine. I get it. There's always somebody to blame, and I think the blame should always go to 25, but I get it. 25 is not on the court. 25 is not visible. He's hiding his face. He's, being a little punk behind the scenes. He's not going to get the attention that everybody on the court will whenever they catch an L, whenever somebody has a bad performance. That's why Ben Simmons sat out this year, because he didn't want to deal with it. So, I all I'm asking, give Tobias a little bit of credit where it's due. If he crumbles down again, start to boo him again. Just keep the same energy, keep it consistent. That's all I'm asking. If you're involved, be engaged on both ends. Keep the same energy. As I mentioned, the Sixers are 1-3 since the last time we spoke. So that was after the Grizzlies game, but that was the last game of the month of January. And so the Sixers are 1-3 in February to start. And we talked about this 4-game stretch the last time that I did speak with everyone here. And we knew this would be kind of I won't say like an important stretch or like a must-win stretch where they have to go above 500. Nothing like that. But a stretch where we see kind of what the Sixers are, who they are. So they come out, they lose to the Wizards without Bradley Beal at home. Bad loss. They come out, they lose to the Mavs in Dallas. Weird game. I'll let them have that loss. That was a really weird game. Luka Doncic balled out of his mind, had a 35-point triple-double. I'll give them that game. It was on the road, some weird shot clock stuff. There was a delay in the game. So I'll take that. I'll take that loss on the chin. And a big win on the road in Chicago, 119-108. DeMar DeRozan gave him a 40-point outing. Embiid gave Philly a 40-point outing. They went head-to-head and, back and forth. And Sixers come out with that big win, which I thought it was a huge win on the road, despite the Bulls not having Levine, Lonzo, Caruso, basically birds. No Kobe White, right? Like they were really decimated as far as their backcourt. But nonetheless, still a good win. That's still a good team, even without those guys. And then we have the loss last night, 114-109 loss to Phoenix, which personally I think was a good loss. I think Phoenix, what can't go understated here is that they're a really good team, if not the best team in the NBA. And they showed it last night. They looked the part. They're really, really good. They're looking like a finals contender again. And what else do you know? Devin Booker and CP3 are doing it big. And that's what they do. And, there's just a calmness about that team. Like, they're down 12, 14 points last night to the Sixers. There's no panic. There's no panic in that team. They weather the storm. They have dogs. They have Mamba mentality guys, and they get the job done in crunch time. And that's a team, I know they went to the finals last year. I think they're even better this year. I think they're even better. I think they're even more well put together. They have even more experience under their belt. They have even more depth. So watch out for the Suns. That's definitely a takeaway from that game. They are the truth. They are everything that they're talked up to be. Don't take them lightly. You could see them very well back in the finals, if not NBA champions this season. The next thing I wanted to talk about, elephant in the room. The Celtics dogged the Brooklyn Nets last night. They dogged the Brooklyn Nets. Led 28-2 at one point to start the game. 28-2, 2 points. You can't make this stuff up. I know KD, Kyrie's out. Kyrie can't play because it's in Brooklyn. He's not vaccinated. Harden's out with a hamstring injury. KD's out with his leg injury. That's real. This team has lost 9 games in a row. They're five and a half games back from the 1 seed. They're currently the 8th seed. They're in the play-in right now in the East. 29-25. I mean, they've lost 9 in a row. Taking demoralizing L's. Like this isn't just a common L. This isn't just your 9th straight loss. This is a blowout by what you would like to think of in Boston as a rival, right? A blowout. Boston has their way. 28-2 to start. I mean, come on. 126-91 to end the game. They lose by what? Over 30 points to the Boston Celtics. And don't look now. The Boston Celtics have won 6 in a row. They're 31-25. They got a better record than Brooklyn. They're right on Philly's tails. They're sitting at the 7th seed right now, so they're also in the play-in tournament. But looking at where they were, towards the end of January and the streak that they're on now, they're getting themselves right back up in the mix. And a lot of those question marks about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum will continue to evaporate. They're 4.5 games back of the 1 seed. As I said, they're the 7th seed currently in the play-in tournament. But the Celtics look hot. Maybe they can make a move to shake something up at the deadline. I did hear the Sixers had interest in Dennis Schroeder. I don't know what a deal like that, if they were to trade, if there was a trade to go down between Boston and Philly of that sort. Don't know what that would really look like. I doubt we would give Boston anything worthwhile. But maybe they can shake it up in a different way. Get a big man in there, something. They lost out on Sabonis, which sucks for them. But I am certainly happy to see Sabonis go to Sacramento rather than Boston. But man, what a turn of events and what quite different directions these two teams are going in. But the reason I wanted to talk about that, obviously, 9 straight losses for the Brooklyn Nets. There's a lot of buzz going on in Brooklyn, right? The elephant in the room. James Harden to Philly, right? Is it real? Is it fake? Is it true? Is it, is this false? Is this all made up? Are Philly fans getting tormented right now? Are we the hook at the end of the line? Are we the bait? Are we the ones? Are we the ones? Just clicking on that bait. I don't know. I don't know what to think because I'm going back and forth. I'm talking to my girlfriend. I'm talking her head off about the trade deadline, about James Harden to Philly, what it could do for the Sixers, and where it could take the Sixers and Embiid. Which maybe that's a good starting point with the Sixers, right? Harden, depending on what the deal is, we'll get into all of that. What's been talked about, but Harden in an Embiid core. On the Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference. I don't care who you put around them. I really don't care. Obviously, it matters, right? Like they would need some pieces. I don't think if they do get a deal done, it's not going to lose the amount of assets that everybody thinks it's going to be. Because I don't think Brooklyn has the leverage here. I know everybody likes to think they do. Harden's playing. Simmons is not. Simmons is under contract. Harden is not. So your perspective may be that Brooklyn has leverage. My perspective is that Philly has leverage. Philly, in reality, could just wait until after the deadline if they really want to pursue Harden. They can pursue him in the summer. Everything that has been leaked says Harden's headed straight to Philly, headed straight down 95. So why do the Sixers need to go and, trade assets, maybe overpay for Harden right now? Because this is, I saw it tweeted out the other day. This is the best duo that you could see as far as a big and a guard since Kobe and Shaq. That's not an overstatement. People will take what they want from that. You can compare Kobe and Harden. I'm not doing all that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about a guard and big man duo that dominates. James Harden and Joel Embiid, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. Argue with the wall. I don't care. It's the best guard and big man duo since Kobe and Shaq, if you put James Harden beside Joel Embiid. So what does that mean? How many rings did Kobe and Shaq get? That's what I'm saying. You put Sixers right at the forefront of contention by adding James Harden. I don't care what you give up. You put the Sixers right at the forefront of contention by adding James Harden. And the Sixers got to get it done. I think they need to get it done before the deadline. So let's go through a little bit of a timeline here, right? Because there's been endless rumors and sources and all types of leaks. So it starts out Windhorse, and this isn't how it started. Let's be honest. But yesterday, Windhorse says talks are heavy. And excuse me, this was actually this morning. This wasn't yesterday. Windhorse says talks are heavy. The Sixers and the Nets are in the deal zone. Make of that what you will. Harden wants Philly. He wants to be in Philly, is what Brian Windhorst is reporting. That he is making it evident to the Brooklyn Nets that he will walk after this season and he will go to Philly. And they will lose him for nothing if they don't move him. So then on the other side of things, we have Woj, right? Woj is the almighty. He's the most trusted. And I fall in line with that. Woj says Philly and Brooklyn are not even engaged in talks. So Windhorst says talks are heavy. They're in the deal zone. Woj says they're not even engaged. They're not even on the phones talking together. They shouldn't say they're not on the phones. I'm sure they're on the phones, just not with each other. So then Jason Dumas reports saying the Sixers are refusing to include Tyrese Maxey. To be clear, that's where I would draw the line to. No. No. Joel Embiid, obviously, untradeable. You're not moving him. Tyrese Maxey, it would take a lot for me to move Tyrese Maxey. For a lot of different reasons. I'm not going to get into them because I don't need to. If you want to trade Tyrese Maxey, I'm not going to argue with you because if he was in the deal, I'm not going to be mad if we get James Harden. I understand what James Harden is and what he could be with the Sixers and Embiid. I'm not going to be mad if Harden is on the Sixers, period. But where would I draw the line? I would draw the line at Maxey. I feel like they can get James Harden without Maxey in the deal. And I don't think that that's unreasonable. Like I said, I believe that the Sixers have the leverage here. Nets can wait until after the deadline. They can wait it out. Hope they change Harden's mind. Sixers will wait. We'll hope that Harden doesn't change his mind. But as of right now, Harden's mind is on Philly. So as of right now, Philly has the leverage, which means you don't have to give the package that the Nets want, per se. So then Dumas follows that report up saying the Nets, if not Maxey, they want Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Thibault, and Andre Drummond. Okay. To be transparent with you all, just to be clear, because he did report that Mills in that scenario would be returning with Harden to Philly. So you're giving me Harden and Patty Mills for Simmons, Curry, Thibault, and Drummond. I'm doing it. If that's what Brooklyn wants to get the deal done before the deadline, I'm doing it. I'm a huge Seth Curry guy. I love Seth Curry. He's from Duke. He's from the Brotherhood. I'm moving him. He's replaceable. He's a shooter. I get it. Philly hasn't had a lot of successful ones. Let's change the tide with Daryl Morey, who knows shooters. Seth Curry's replaceable. He's expendable in a Harden deal, period. Matisse Thybulle. Like, I'm so sick of this conversation, and it's getting to the point where I'm like forced to disrespect Matisse Thybulle in order to make my point. You can't call him a 3-and-D guy if he can't shoot threes above 35%. He's not a 3-and-D guy. That's not a specialty of his. Defense, he's a great defender, probably the best perimeter defender in the NBA right now. And the other guy would probably be Ben Simmons when he's playing. But he is a liability on offense. And you're not going to tell me that a role player is deciding a trade for James Harden for me. It's not happening. Seth Curry and Matisse Thybulle are role players. They might be glorified in Philadelphia, but they are role players. And I'm not sure how big Matisse's role can get until he gets some type of sense on offense. Love Matisse's character. I love his defensive intangibles. You can't be a liability on offense when you're out surrounding Embiid. You're trying to surround Embiid with shooters and you're throwing Thybulle in the corner. That's not going to work with me. That's not going to work as far as winning a championship. And then Drummond, like, I get it. People today, like Andre Drummond, I get it. He's the best backup center that we've ever had for Embiid. Guess what? When you have the best center in the world, you don't need the best backup center. That doesn't make sense. You don't need him. It's as simple as that. I digress with Andre Drummond. I'm not going to sit here and, have this conversation. Andre Drummond is a backup, once again, a role player. He is a bench piece. He would be great for Brooklyn. I'm not going to lie. That's exactly what they need. Is Andre Drummond stopping Joel Embiid when they match up with Brooklyn? Fuck no. Fuck no. And once you get to the playoffs, when Joel Embiid is logging 30 to 35 minutes per night, how many minutes is Andre Drummond getting? 10, 15? You can't give those 10, 15 minutes to a buyout candidate. Maybe even a candidate that can space the floor. Do the deal. You do the deal all day. What I said on Twitter earlier, I would respond to the Nets and I would say, hey, come on. He's going to walk in the offseason. We'll give you this. We'll give you Ben, and you can choose 2 out of the 3 of Drummond, Seth, and Matisse. Pick 2 out of the 3, whichever ones you want. You can have them with Ben. First round pick swap. Let's get this deal done. Let's get this deal done. And as a side note, just as far as, the Maxey conversation, if the Nets are hell-bent on Tyrese Maxey and there's a deal that needs to be done with him to get Harden to Philly, okay. We can do it. I want Cam Thomas back in that deal. I like Cam Thomas. I don't like him as much as Maxey. He's not as good as Maxey. His ceiling's not like Maxey's. He's a nice piece. And he has a decent ceiling. He's played well for them. Shows a good upside. I want him back in that deal. I'm not moving Maxey anyways, but, just hypothetically speaking. So my answer obviously is, the Sixers shouldn't wait until the summer. One, because you had deals on the table that could have made them better this year. And to be clear of my expectations or my thoughts on the Sixers, I think they're right there as far as contending for a championship this season. They're right there. I know they're 1-3 in their last 4 games, right, against good competition. They just beat the Chicago Bulls, the number 1 or 2 seed in the East, on the road. And then they just lost to the number 1 team in the NBA by, 5 points? On a night where Seth Curry has 3 points and goes 1 for 9 from the field? They're right there. And some of these guys are still figuring themselves out. Now, Doc said point guard. They need another guard. And they do. But that's minimal. That's not a James Harden away. That's why I say James Harden makes them clear cut. Just adding anything can make them a legit contender. Put them up there in the top 5 to 6 teams that could win the championship this year. I think they could be there. anyways. But that's a convo for a different day. I don't think Philly should wait. I don't think you should waste this season, honestly. I think this is so wide open. You look back on these 2 seasons, this season and last season, as far as the parity in the NBA. You don't have these powerhouses dominating. The field is wide open. The caliber of stars, it's widespread. There's such a parity right now. And the Sixers need to take advantage. I'm not going to say that it's going to happen. Hindsight is always 2020, right? What if we look back on these past 2 trade deadlines last season? Didn't get Harden, you didn't get Lowry. This season, you don't get Harden, you don't get Haliburton, McCollum, whoever the hell else was on the list, right? You don't get any of those guys because you were waiting on Harden. Let's say Brooklyn wins the championship. Harden's back in with Brooklyn. He says, I'm not walking. I'm signing back with KD and Kyrie. Let's run it back. When do we start looking at Joel Embiid like we look at Damian Lillard? Like we look at Bradley Beal, these guys that are just so loyal, almost to a fault, where they're just never going to get to win anything because of their loyalty. Disappointment after disappointment in Philly. When do we start to look at things like that? We aren't there yet. Don't get me wrong. We aren't there yet. But I feel is if we don't get Harden at this deadline and we don't make high caliber players to fill this void, this 30 million plus void in our roster, we could look back at these 2 seasons and thoroughly regret it. Not just sending it. Send the package they want. Send it. They got the green light. I think you got to send it. I don't know what the Nets truly want. There's a lot of smoke, a lot of different sources, a lot of different rumors, leaks. Green light. It's time to go, Morey. We got to get Harden. If there's any ounce of him that wants to be in Philly, it's got to happen right now. Take advantage of the moment. Don't give him time to change his mind. I digress. Obviously, I want Harden in Philly. But kind of the pressure that I'm putting on Morey here, and the reason I've been thinking about saying this, and I'm not going to say it yet, but if Morey doesn't get Harden at the deadline, I don't care. You could say you're waiting until the offseason. You don't get Harden at the deadline, it's a failure. You failed. Because this team only needs to be marginally better to really be at the top 5 contention as far as, teams that can contend in the NBA this season. Embiid is playing out of his mind. You just need to get marginally better. The reason I say this is because of the other deals happening around the league, which now I'm going to go through them with you really quick here to end the show. But, just to start the dominoes of deals that have happened over the last few days, on Friday, the initial big trade, I guess you could say, we had the LA Clippers sending Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, a future second round pick to Portland. And we had Portland sending the Clippers back Norman Powell, Robert Covington. 2 great pieces for the LA Clippers. And I'll be honest with you all. I don't know what the hell, once again, the Portland Trailblazers are doing. They're doing their best. They're trying their best to impress Damian Lillard. I can just totally tell it. I love it for the Clippers. I mean, these guys got dogs for days. Norman Powell and Robert Covington, they fit right in. Defensive-minded, physical. And Norman Powell can score that thing. Like, you talk about something that can hold the Clippers over until Kawhi gets back, until PG gets healthy. They just got it. Covington and Powell, they fit the role. And these are guys that can play alongside Kawhi and PG once they get back. The Clippers are stacked with depth and versatility. which I'm sure it's something we're going to talk about down the line as we get into the last stretch of this season as PG gets healthy. Don't know when Kawhi is going to return, but as PG gets healthy, it's going to be a formidable Clippers team out there in that Western Conference. They're already playing decent without those guys. Let's be honest. They just beat the Sixers at home. So on Sunday, the NBA followed that deal up. We had the Cavs sending Ricky Rubio, a 2022 first-round pick, lottery protected, a 2022 second-round pick, and a 2027 second-round pick to the Indiana Pacers for Karis LeVert and a 2022 second-round pick. Honestly, in hindsight, on Sunday I was saying, wow, I guess Indiana. Like, it's not like a bad return for Indiana. You're just kind of clearing cap space. You get an expiring contract. You get a couple draft picks, some draft compensation. First round pick, even though it's lottery protected, still pretty good for Karis LeVert. Love it for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You had another scoring threat in the backcourt there with Darius Garland. They lost Colin Sexton for the season, so Karis LeVert will fill that void beautifully. And he's a guy that can light it up at times. Once he gets on track and in a good system like the Cavs that are winning games right now, winning culture, Karis LeVert can be a really good piece for them. And in hindsight, I see why the Indiana Pacers did it. Because in their minds, they had a deal on the table that actually went through yesterday. We'll get into that shortly. I just want to get to one deal we're going in a timeline here. We're going in order. So before the deal that I was mentioning right there, we had a deal yesterday. Portland sending CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, and Tony Snell to the New Orleans Pelicans for Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nicole Alexander-Walker, Didi Luzoda, a future first-round pick, and 2 future second-round picks from New Orleans. So all of that goes to Portland in return for CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, and Tony Snell. Obviously, the notable pieces in that deal coming from New Orleans to Portland, Josh Hart, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is a nice 3-level scorer. I believe he's just in his second season so far, but a nice young piece, honestly. If, Portland was going for the youth movement, that's a great move. You still have Damian Lillard. You're talking about rebuilding around him. I'm not even going to get into Portland because they're fucking weird. They're doing some weird shit. Damian Lillard is weird. It's almost like some cult shit there. Like, dude, why are you being so loyal to a city that has tried to build around you? What, like 5 or 6 times? What has it been? 10 years? Give it up. I digress on that, though. That's not my business. Dame can do what he wants. Portland can do what they want. I love the deal for New Orleans. I do. CJ McCollum, he's a guy that gets shit on sometimes, but he's a bona fide 20-plus point scorer. And that's exactly what the New Orleans Pelicans need. Obviously, Zion hasn't played yet this season. Once he gets back, you have Brandon Ingram, and now you have CJ McCollum. That's a nice, solid big 3. And then you get Larry Nance, who's a nice, solid rotational piece as well. Valanciunas has been a nice piece there. These are all things they can look forward to in hopes of getting into the play-in of the Western Conference. The bigger deal, in my opinion, yesterday, just my opinion, because that was a pretty big deal between New Orleans and Portland. We had Sacramento sending, believe it or not, the untradeable, the untouchable Tyrese Haliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson to the Indiana Pacers for DeMontis Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, a 2027 second-round pick. So big pieces, obviously. Sacramento gets Sabonis. Jeremy Lamb's a nice little piece, rotational. Justin Holiday's another nice rotational piece. A little bit of draft compensation. And Indiana gets Haliburton, Buddy Hield and Tristan Thompson, who will most likely be bought out, go to a contender. He says he wants to win. Buddy Hield, they said they're not going to trade him. They're not going to flip him. We'll see about that. Tyrese Haliburton. Kings said they were not going to move him. That he wasn't included in any talks. They love him over Fox. They sent it. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it. You got to try something. I heard it on the Bill Simmons podcast earlier today. It's like doing a third mistake to make up for your first and second mistake. Using draft compensation on Tyrese Haliburton in the first place when you have De'Aaron Fox, who you're about to give big money to. Then doubling down on that mistake and going out and getting Davion Mitchell in the lottery as a lottery selection. So now you have a triangle of starting point guards potentially. So they double down on that and they trade Haliburton, who I think is probably the best guard out of the three, for Domantas Sabonis, which Domantas Sabonis is a great piece. He's a stat stuffer, but he's a loser. Make of that what you will. Nonetheless, I like Haliburton over Sabonis, my opinion. Point guards over big men, my opinion. I'm looking at that deal, and that's the one that kind of bothers me, if the Philadelphia 76ers end up getting nothing. That deal could have been done for Ben Simmons. I get it. It might not be the value that everybody wants. It's the value I wanted. I wouldn't have cared. I honestly wouldn't have blinked an eye if they would have done this deal. Obviously, I would have preferred a Barnes mixed in there or, some other piece rather than Tristan Thompson. They would probably have to include some draft comp in that deal as well. But Haliburton and Hield in return for Ben Simmons, a guy that's giving nothing to the Sixers right now. Like I said, I think the Sixers only need to get marginally better to be right at the forefront of contention this season. Tyrese Haliburton fits that nod for me. He's a 6'5", lengthy point guard. Averages over 7 assists per game. One of the best pull-up three-point shooters in the NBA. Literally second in the NBA behind Mike Conley. 40% from three. Length. Facilitation. He'll get better on defense. He's still filling out into his body. He's like 21 years old. Give me Haliburton all day. Give me a Tyrese squared backcourt all day. They didn't pull the trigger. Now Indiana has a nice little point guard there. Obviously, they have Malcolm Brogdon. I think Malcolm Brogdon and Tyrese Haliburton can play together in the backcourt. As I mentioned, Haliburton is 6'5". He's not a small guard. Malcolm Brogdon is not a small guard. You can play both of those guys in the backcourt. You can start both of them. So all in all, I liked what Indiana did. You move Karis LeVert and you get Tyrese Haliburton. You were going to move Sabonis anyways. Tyrese Haliburton's a better player of all three of those players. I like it. I like what Indiana's doing. They're not going to win this year. They may hurt themselves a little bit if they were trying to, tank, because Tyrese Haliburton is a winning style of player. But nonetheless, I like the deal. Sacramento, you get off Hield's contract. You get Sabonis, who's probably one of the best players to ever play for Sacramento. But how far does it take you? Fox and Sabonis, how does that fit? I don't know. We'll see. That's a conversation for another day. We will see how that fits. The last deal of the day, and I apologize if anything's happened while I've been on here, but we had the Jazz sending Joe Ingles, Elijah Hughes, and a second-round pick. In return, they get Nicole Alexander-Walker from Portland. And they also get Hernan Gomez from the San Antonio Spurs. Portland, in return, gets Ingles, Hughes, and the second-round pick. And San Antonio gets Thomas Satoransky in a second-round pick to compensate for losing Hernan Gomez. Nicole Alexander-Walker was like, once they got back in the CJ deal and they throw it away, they throw it to the Jazz. They get Joe Ingles, who just tore his ACL. contract expires at the end of the season. He's never going to play a game for Portland. What the hell are they doing, man? Clearing cap space. Nobody's coming to fucking Portland, dude. And I'm not speaking for my high horse. Nobody's coming to Philly. That's why we have to go out and fucking trade for him. Nobody's coming to Portland, Dame. Make a rap song about it. It ain't going to change shit. He's loyal to a fault. I'm just wondering how long we go before we have that conversation about Embiid. But that is a conversation for another day, guys. With that being said, that is all I have for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Thanks for tuning in. If you are not already following DSM Media, make sure you follow DSM Media at DSM_media on Twitter, DSM.DoSomethingMajor on Instagram, and at DSM Media on TikTok. Make sure you check us out on all social media platforms. We got content coming daily. I also want to shout out our sponsors over at Manscaped. Valentine's Day is coming up, fellas. Might be too late to get cleaned up before then, but don't make that same mistake heading into, the rest of the year there. So make sure you're doing right, shaving your genitals and keeping your ladies happy, fellas, on Valentine's Day. Make sure to head over to manscaped.com. Use code DSM for 20% off and free shipping. That's code DSM at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. For myself, for DSM, you can follow me at Scotty Drowned. Have a great night, everyone. And go Sixers. Get the fucking deal done, Daryl.